Very interestingly, there is one place in the world where all these features of American socialism are in fact present. And that country is indeed Venezuela. The Scandinavian model is really simple. Everyone benefits and everyone has to pay. In other words, this is not a soak the rich scheme. The highest tax rates in Scandinavia, 60, 70, and 80%, kick in on the middle class. If you make $50,000 in Scandinavian countries, you're in the 50% tax bracket. Not only are you at that rate, there's a 25% VAT tax on everything you buy, which is a regressive tax that hits the poor more than it hits the rich. The Scandinavians are into soaking the poor, and they don't make any bones about it. Their point is, if you want this package of benefits, we have the right to take half your stuff. Now, contrast this with the deceitful way in which people like AOC and we're not going to go after, they don't even have the guts to say they're going to go after the upper middle class. They go, we're going to go after the billionaires. There are 300 billionaires in America. We're going to go after the billionaires. So in other words, what you have in American, well, Scandinavian socialism is, I call it unification socialism. Everybody's in the same boat. American socialism is division socialism. Let's take society, divide it as many ways we can, intensify hatred toward the group that is being demonized. So intensify hatred, for example, of the black against the white, the illegal against the legal, the poor against the rich, the gay against the straight. And so what you get is this thing that's now called intersectionality, which I guess is a marriage of all these different types of divisions. I want to suggest that is the very and exact opposite of what they do in Scandinavia. They don't do that. Now, very interestingly, there is one place in the world where all these features of American socialism are in fact present. And that country is indeed Venezuela. I just want to tell you a little bit about the Venezuelan story because you'll see how closely, with almost eerie closeness, it parallels the American story. First, when Hugo Chavez came to power in 1998, he campaigned as a third-party man. He was essentially Venezuela's Obama. He said, I'm not a leftist. He was interviewed. He said, I'm not a socialist. No, no, no. He said, if you don't like what I'm doing, throw me out. I'm a moderate. His slogan, I kid you not, was hope and change. Hope and change. Hugo Chavez only started the Socialist Party in Venezuela in 2007, 8 years after he came in. It was a bit of a long-term plan, but the moment he did it, he started labeling everything in Venezuela made in socialism. So you walk into the grocery store, you pick up a carton of milk, made in socialism. Now, the way that Hugo Chavez created what's happened in Venezuela since, the first thing he did is he embraced identity politics. The first thing he said was, notice, I am not a white man. I am of indigenous stock. So right away, in a country that is very multiracial, that had not been free of racial problems, but racial problems were not in the forefront, Hugo Chavez began to racialize everything. He even began to attack the tradition of Miss Venezuela because he said too many of the models are European. He said, look, we have 2 of our Venezuelan ships that are named after Venezuelan beauty queens. He stripped those names off and he replaced them with 2 black women who supposedly raised the Venezuelan hero Simón Bolívar. What I'm getting at is Hugo Chavez dived right into identity politics. One of the great villains for Hugo Chavez, Columbus. How familiar is that? Go to Scandinavia and start denouncing Columbus. Nobody will know what you're talking about. They don't get it. They have nothing against Columbus. The only regret about Columbus is that he wasn't named Sven. The second thing that Hugo Chavez did, confiscate guns. Hugo Chavez goes, guns are very dangerous. The citizenry does not need guns. They had all kinds of clever commercials to convince people to voluntarily turn in their guns before the guns are forcibly confiscated. And the moment that they were forcibly confiscated, the state began to unleash its force against the population. How? Not just using the military, but using street thugs that are called colectivos. This is Venezuela's answer to Antifa. These street thugs are former criminals, do-nothings, losers. Anybody who signs up with the regime and says, I'm willing to be your henchman, okay, go out and beat people who are protesting against the regime. And the good news, you have guns, which we're going to give you, and they don't. So the confiscation of guns was planned as a means of disarming the population to strengthen the state and its hold on the population.